Direct from San Francisco, California, in the heart of the Tenderloin, welcome to the Kiff and Ang Podcast. San Francisco Lockdown Edition, a subsidiary of Kiff and Ang Productions in association with Kiff and Ang Studios. Online at kiffandangpodcast.com. And now, Kiff and Ang.
You're listening to the Kiff and Ang Podcast online at kiffandang.com. And we talk about everything in San Francisco because, of course, San Francisco does everything a little bit better. I don't know. That's what I think. San Francisco saved me, so that's where I'm at.
We definitely walked to our own beat.
You hear a lot about the Stonewall riots. And since we're right in the heart of Pride Month, one of the best celebrations, in my opinion, I thought we would talk about something. And Ange thought we should talk about something because she's kind of our lead here about the Compton's Cafeteria Riot. Because again, San Francisco does things first. We do things better. And in honor of Pride Month, we're going to lead it off with the Compton's Cafeteria Riot. And when I first started reading about this, I thought, Compton and is not in San Francisco. What's going on here?
That was the name of the family that owned the cafeteria. Gene Compton. Compton, yeah.
And this was August of 1966, which is a completely different world than it is now. I mean, completely different. There were no civil rights for LGBT. And in fact, LGBT was was it just LGB?
It was LGBT at the time.
At the time.
But the T was kind of like, there was a lot of transphobia that happened in the gay scene.
Within that community, there was a lot of
right. So like if you were a transgender woman, there were probably a lot of gay bars that you wouldn't have been welcome in. That's just not, there was not a lot of unity. The lesbians were not unified either. We all know that when HIV and AIDS started is really when a lot of that unification between those diversified groups began. So yeah, I mean, it was a different time too. I mean, we're talking about the sexual revolution because we got the pill in the 60s. And what does that mean for women?
That's right.
We are in control of our, we have the decisions. We can do what we want to do and have a good time doing it.
It was kind of something I took for granted. I'll be completely honest.
Me too.
It was a freedom I took completely for granted.
Me too.
So lucky us.
Until about 1981. And then it all changed for me with, that was AIDS and HIV. The civil rights movement, I
was born in 78, so I wasn't
yeah, I'm old.
active in 81.
I was born in 1967, so
really?
Yeah, 52.
Well, we're only 10 years older than each other.
So I get to talk about stuff and say,
why were you having
sex today?
Why were you having sex at 12 years old?
I was not having sex at 12 years old. I was understanding that I was not going to be having sex as I got older.
I see.
The world scope was beginning to change. So
I had some fun in college.
So in addition to the sexual liberation, we had the equal rights movement. We had sexuality overall had become a movement. The gays were beginning to speak up. The lesbians were beginning to speak up. And I remember this time, it's kind of weird because I was in Phoenix at the time. And if it was a lesbian bar or a gay bar, there were these little symbols. They had like regular names. They couldn't say
that's
gay
right.
Bar. They had these little symbols.
Yeah.
And you knew that you were either welcome or not welcome there.
That's
so
crazy.
It is. It's
so
different time entirely.
So when we're talking about how transgender people were even excluded from the gay community, that put them in a really perilous place, right? I mean, for them to even exist, there was a lot of prostitution. They were hanging out with some of the seedy people. There was hustling. And I mean, you can't blame people for they're not going to live their life.
They weren't going to get a job anyplace else.
Exactly.
In San Francisco at the time.
And they had to eat too. And where would they go to eat?
Well, it's not just that. It was illegal to impersonate a woman. in the city of San Francisco at the time.
And so when they'd go to the 24-hour Compton's cafeteria,
after a long night of hustling,
after a long night,
needing a cup of coffee.
Yeah, that's all you want after that.
You know, talk about some crazy stories that happened that night with some of your sisters.
For sure.
And Compton's had assumed this sort of attitude that they were keeping the good people out of their business. And so they slowly began to incorporate this sort of attitude to harass the transgenders out of their business.
So the owners of Compton's Cafe, which was a 24-hour cafe on
Cafeteria, 101 Turk.
Cafeteria. It was on Turk. Okay.
Yeah.
They felt that the transgender people were keeping the good people out.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was still the Tenderloin at the time. So
Tenderloin. All right.
Let's not glorify this.
So they decided to start a terrible policy, is what you're saying.
Yeah, they would treat them badly. They would ignore them. They would, just have confrontations constantly, cause confrontations. So they had to call the police. The police, there was one particular officer that all of the transgender women were familiar with, who was just loved coming to those kind of calls and really wanted to get his licks in. And so it created this world.
Some internalization, if you ask me, but that's just an opinion. I don't know what to say anyway.
It's the 60s, Yeah. So there's a lot of internalization happening in the 60s, I think. A lot of repression for a lot of different people. So it created this world of animosity. And when the cops would come, the transgender women, they would argue, and sometimes things got a little out of hand. And then
things really hit a boiling point, and they just didn't want to take it anymore. What happened?
That police officer that I just mentioned tried to arrest a transgender woman who just had enough. And she threw a cup of coffee in his face.
Wigs off is what you wrote. Wigs off.
Wigs off.
Heels out.
Exactly what happened.
And things went down. Dishes and furniture were thrown. The plate glass window was broke. The fight was on the streets, and they were not having it anymore. And this predated the Stonewall riots, which I find completely
by years
fascinating. Fascinating.
The police called for reinforcements. They carried away 2 arrest wagons full of people that they arrested from the riot. Wow. The next day, here's the really cool part. Okay, so first of all, here's the not cool part. This is not mentioned. We cannot find the exact date of the riot on record anywhere because the police files from the 60s for this case have been destroyed. Lower cases get destroyed, apparently.
What?
Yes. And the newspaper didn't cover it at all. Not a single mention. So all we know is from survivors. And it wasn't until years later that it was recognized that this whole situation had a chain reaction down the line.
Wow.
So for many years, it was just the transgenders fought the cops out in the cafeteria. But that being said, the very next day, something really unique happens. We mentioned that the transgender women didn't have a lot of places that they were welcome.
Yeah, that there was even divisiveness within the gay community.
The gay community, yeah. They had transphobia straight up in some of these bars. They didn't want anything to do with them.
Wow.
But who shows up at Compton Cafeteria the next day when all the transgender women are locked up in jail? Lesbians, gay guys, people from the Tenderloin.
Wow.
Street people from the Tenderloin that had been treated badly by Compton Cafeteria as well. And let's just say that after the plate glass windows were replaced,
the Comptons had replaced that huge big plate glass window, right?
Yes, they had mysteriously broke more than once. So, this is an interesting time in San Francisco history, and I think it's often overlooked by by so many, you know.
I didn't even know about this. I had
I know.
zero idea. And I love, I love quirky history things. I'm a history
There is a
geek. Like,
plaque.
that's kind of my nerd thing, you know?
There's a plaque, and I'll put it in the video here. There's a plaque that marks the spot where Compton's Cafeteria was, and talks about the riot. And I don't know when people are going to listen to this, but I am going to edit this show today, and I want to drop it tomorrow, because tomorrow, and I will also drop the information in this video, which is Thursday, June 18th. Is that it? 17th, 18th?
You're asking a lot, and I've been home
I know.
by myself for a while now.
Who keeps dates in a pandemic? But they they're having a protest at the site where Compton's Cafeteria was, that is really combining the two struggles between Black Lives Matter.
They're doing that tomorrow, or
yes.
Well, what will be tomorrow, and people probably watching, so it'll be happening today.
Yes.
Are you gonna head out
today
there? And
when
if you
this
are,
video.
will you be wearing masks and all that good stuff if you go?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. And I am going to go down there, and I'm going to talk to the people that are there. And I believe that there's going to be a Compton Cafeteria survivor, or person that was there, historian.
So,
and
I'd love to do a
grab
part
a picture
two of this too, based on your experience at the thing tomorrow.
Yeah, I definitely.
Also, I have a huge favor from everybody listening. If you're a survivor, or if you know a survivor and have a story to tell, please comment, get a hold of us. I would love to talk to you. Like, let's get you onto the show.
We would love to have more oral history of the Compton Cafeteria riot. It is such an amazing story, and it ultimately had such an amazing outcome for so many people. It's a notable turning point for the LGBT community, and so many things happened later, from the roots of what started from an act of civil disobedience in the middle of a hot summer night of August 1966.
Thank you very much, Ange. This was a great show. And if you want to see more cool shows like this, make sure to like and subscribe. We're on YouTube and Instagram and Twitter and Patreon and every single podcast outlet out there, because Ange is a goddess. Kiff and Ang Podcast.
We are working on world domination for sure.
The opinions and topics discussed in any Kiff and Ang production or show are meant to be controversial, provocative, and possibly create a conversation that is not already being had. The most important thing to remember about this production is that it has zero educational or historical value other than from a purely popular parody perspective. By listening to this podcast, you understand that it is solely for entertainment purposes. Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, parody, scholarship, and research. Kiff and Ang Productions is meant to provide parody in an already difficult life. If you find no humor or entertainment in our productions, well, for goodness sakes, don't listen.